Tired of restless nights? At Leesa, we know good sleep is essential for mental, physical, and emotional health. From memory foam mattresses to hybrids that keep you cool all night long, Leesa's mattresses offer exceptional comfort and support with free delivery and 100 nights to try out your mattress in the comfort of your home. For a limited time, save up to $700 off select mattresses plus 2 free pillows. Go to leesa.com/iHeart for an additional $50 off mattresses and select goods. Exclusions apply. See leesa.com for more details.
How powerful is Cox Internet? Powerful enough to let your band members in Vegas, Phoenix, and Rhode Island jam like you're all in the same garage. Get Cox Internet powered by fiber with America's fastest download speeds. It's internet built for tomorrow, today. Cox, always building better. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial connection. Speeds vary and are not guaranteed. Cox terms and other restrictions may apply. Analysis by Ookla of Speed Test Intelligence Data. Fixed median download speeds. US Q3 2023.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com as well as the mobile app. He's Jonathan Casillas. I'm Lance Meadow with you for the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways for you to interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can also find us on Twitter, hashtag Giants Chat, and you can also directly interact with the two of us on Twitter. I'm at Lance Meadow, one word, last name, M-E-D-O-W. He is at JCasillas52. And the program, as always, is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. And you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do end-of-season awards. We haven't had an opportunity to really take a step back, reflect on the year, so we're going to focus on the individuals. We're going to use the NFL Honors, which is coming up right before the Super Bowl in terms of the different categories. And if you want to weigh in, you have individuals that stuck out to you in these various categories, we are open, all ears with respect to that. But we figured it'd be a good way to put the season in perspective and go category by category, as well as maybe get into some of the news coming out of the All-Star games. Today is day one of practice for the Senior Bowl after they had measurements yesterday. So we'll go through MVPs. We'll do Offensive and Defensive Player of the Years, Offensive and Defensive Rookies of the Year, as well as Most Improved Comeback Player of the Year. So there's a lot to delve into. And let's start at the top of the food chain, JC, and Most Valuable Player. And you can really go in a variety of different directions for this award. You could go with a player that maybe did not hold up durability-wise and proved his true value. And you can make a case for individuals on the offense and the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if you want me to go first or you want to go first in this category, but there is somebody that I have in mind because I think he fit the profile of a variety of different categories.
Yeah, I could go first on this one. I think, you look at the Giants, whole team and what they did this year, even last year as well. There's one guy I think that's been the most consistent. He made All-Pro this year, and that's Dexter Lawrence. I think he showed week in and week out he's one of the best players in the NFL, top defensive tackles in the league, and he's dominant. And when he has a game, when he's, dominating, he literally shuts the offense down. He has direct impact on every single play because he's literally right in front of the guy that has the ball in the center, and he lines up right over top of him, sometimes literally shoulder to shoulder against him, parallel to this guy. And, he's very effective, and, he's dominant, and he showed it several times this year, several games this year where, the sack numbers aren't always there, but the pressures are always there.
Sure.
And he's always flustering quarterbacks. He makes, you talk about how this league is now in 2024, and you even look at the Super Bowl players right now, the Super Bowl teams. You got Patrick Mahomes, who is making the case to be the GOAT only 6 years into the NFL, and Tom Brady just retired a few years ago, and it was like no one's going to catch him. Just a few years later, Mahomes is in that conversation because of the quarterback play, because the play he's playing at the level he's playing at. And Dexter Lawrence affects these guys on a consistent basis. And I just don't see nobody really being as effective as an individual as Dexter Lawrence is?
Well, I think Dexter Lawrence makes a good case. He's going to be another label for me as we go through the balance of these awards. I'm going to go with Bobby Okereke. I mean, he had such a standout season, Jonathan, and I think he comes close to what you're talking about, where the things he did, what he set up for Micah McFadden.
Big playmaker, bro.
The guys up front, because he was able to clean up a lot and have those opportunistic plays. And I'm going to use the numbers just to put his season in perspective within comparison to the other players on this team. He led the team in combined tackles with 149. The next closest player was McKinney at 116.
And they played the same amount of snaps.
And they all played, correct, every single snap. And that's a noticeable difference, right, in terms of tackles. You want to go solo.
It's supposed to be that way, though. The linebacker is supposed to have a little more tackles than the safety.
Without a doubt.
With all things considered the same.
That's troubling because that means the guys up front did not take care of their business.
Exactly.
No, I'm with you there. 92 tackles for Okereke, 78 for McKinney. He set a career high in sacks with 2.5. And Okereke's not a big sack guy, but he had some of those disruptive plays.
Yeah, he did.
We talked about
durability. Those came a little later in the season, too. Yeah,
they did. So. Yep. But once again, I mean, for a guy who's got to man the middle of the field and is playing next to some youth, I think for him to at least have some opportunities to get after quarterback says an awful lot. He had 11 tackles for loss, and that put him third on the team behind McFadden and Kayvon Thibodeau. He didn't have a boatload of quarterback hits, but when you look at what he had in comparison to the rest of the team, he was a top 5 player with 6. And the forced fumbles, 4. In addition to, once again, the interceptions that he had. He finished with 2, which was second on the team. I mean, every category you go to, he contributed in some capacity.
I fully agree with you, and he's going to be on my list a little bit later on.
Understandable.
But he's responsible for more than 6 because he has 2 interceptions and 4 forced fumbles. But he also tipped a couple passes that got intercepted. So he's responsible for a lot of big game-changing plays, and I guess this is going to be my little part. We don't have to talk about him later when I bring him up later. But, I mean, for me, he was right behind Dexter. And it was like, who's going to get the defensive MVP? Who's going to get the defensive player of the year? Who's going to get the MVP? It was between those two because I think the impact that Dexter Lawrence had, Bobby Okereke had a very similar effect at that position.
Well, let's stay on the defensive side of the ball because I have a feeling defensive player of the year, we're going to probably go the opposite.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Bobby Okereke is my defensive player of the year.
Dexter Lawrence is my defensive player.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to duplicate. I mean, you can make a case for both of these guys being MVP as well as defensive player, but in order to avoid the duplication, Dexter Lawrence would be my defensive player of the year because if you're looking at that facet of the team, as you highlighted with his numbers, he does a lot of the dirty work. He's the unsung hero. Everybody feeds off him. And he had 21 quarterback hits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that alone warrants Defensive Player of the Year. And I think you would echo those sentiments with respect to what Bobby Okereke did for several other players, both behind him as well as in front of him.
Yeah, 100%. And the tandem, look, it wasn't statistically this year defensively. They weren't that great, but at times they looked really good. At times they were dominant as well,
Oh, sure.
You look at the Commanders game and what they did, creating those 6 turnovers, giving a lot of chance for the offense. And I'm telling you, that's a correlation with Bobby Okereke and Dexter Lawrence, man. The guys, they played at a very high level on a consistent basis this year. And, that got the Giants in very competitive games, throughout the whole entire year. And that's basically on the defense, really, for what they did. And it's these two guys being, the pinnacle parts, the anchors of this defense.
They were the identity of the team, the defense. Think about it. I mean, we talked about the offense all throughout the season, the struggles. If it wasn't for the defensive performance, more often than not, we could take a few of these games and maybe turn them into losses as opposed to wins. So that's more of a reason why I think the MVP should come from the defensive side of the ball. It's not to take anything away from Jonathan, the offensive players, but given the fact that this team did average under 20 points per game and touchdowns at times was a struggle, and you look at the opportunistic plays on defense, I just think a defensive player makes a much stronger case to be the most valuable component of this team. With that being said, let's go to the offensive player of the year. And this becomes a little bit more challenging because of what I just laid out. I'll go first here, and I'm going to come up with a player here that I think is a bit under the radar this season, but when you look overall, really put together a nice campaign. And I understand Saquon is the dangling fruit that's easy to grab. I'm not going to go with Saquon. Instead, Darius Slayton, to me,
wow.
is my offensive player of the year. And the reason being is, if you look closer at his numbers, Darius had a career high in receiving yards. He matched his career
That's
high
his career high
in receptions. Yeah, 770.
But how much? I thought he had rookie year. I thought he had like 800 or something like that. His rookie year.
I
know he had a
at the
good year
numbers before
rookie
the
year.
season. Well, he did have a good rookie year. The reason why he had a good rookie year is I think you're thinking of the 8 touchdowns.
8 touchdowns, right.
Yeah, but when it comes to yardage, Darius actually had a career high this year.
Yeah,
and I was looking him over. I just
4
want to double check.
touchdowns.
Because you've given me
A lot of big plays, 11 big plays.
Yeah, his rookie year he had 740.
Oh, so
770 was a new career high
Got
for him
you.
this year. And then the 50 receptions matched what he did his second year in 2020.
Gotcha.
He had 4 touchdowns, so that was half of what he had his rookie year. But 2019, the standout statistic was the 8 touchdowns.
Yep.
So that's why I think that's the number that is jumping off the page for most people. And then yardage per reception, 15.4. That was his second highest behind 2022. And we saw those big plays that he made, which mainly came up in the second half of the season. But the reason why he's my offensive player of the year is, as I mentioned, it was hard to put together explosive plays this season. Darius is responsible, as you were just hinting at, the majority of those explosive plays, with the exception of Jalen Hyatt here or there. So Darius, to me, is my standout offensive player. Given the struggles, the changes at quarterback, what he still produced, he's my offensive player of the year.
That's a good pick. Slayton he was responsible for the Giants' explosiveness this year. If you're going to call their offense explosive at all, it's because of what he did.
Well, and that's why I'm saying
sure.
when it's limited, you've got to give credit to the player 100%. That gets it done.
I agree. And like you said, it's very hard to kind of pick offensively who was, the MVP. You had 3 different quarterbacks playing this year.
A lot of changes.
A very heavy box a lot. The highest receptions for any player was 60, and that was Wandale.
Yep.
And he had, I think, a pretty good campaign this year. But I think, when you look at what Saquon Barkley did this year, he missed a couple of games, of course, because of injury. But, he still almost had 1,000 yards. His average was only at 3.9, which is not great. But he had, some big plays here and there. And, when you go in to play the Giants, and I played defense my whole life, my 9 years in the NFL, I was always in the meeting room. And the number one thing, and I think it's still this way now, even though the league is a little bit different, is stop the run. When you look at the Giants defensively, going into a meeting and I'm looking at the Giants offense, he's highlighted as an elite player.
Sure.
He's the guy that's that's the first person we're going to talk about. And that's who we're going to stop. And the Giants, I think it's no question that the Giants want to give him the ball over 20 times a game. That's just kind of the Giants' philosophy. It's a great philosophy to have. But other teams know that. And they still weren't able to hold him down, I think, with the carousel among offensive line, with the not so great play on the offensive line throughout the year, and then 3 different quarterbacks playing. Receivers not really having, like we said, 60 catches. Waller being out a lot. A lot of focus was on Saquon.
Oh, there was a reason to keep guys in the box this season.
And I think game in and game out, I never looked at him and said, "Oh, he's not playing that well." Oh, he's not. Where's Saquon at? That's because they don't give him the ball, not because he has the ball and he's not doing anything with it. Even with all the focus being on him, I think he still had a pretty good season for what this offense did. Like you said, this offense averaged 15 points a game. And Saquon was responsible for rushing, 51 first downs in rushing, and then also in passing. He was responsible for 16. So he was a guy that you could rely on in the run game and the pass game.
And like I said, he would have been, if Darius Slayton didn't have the season that he had, I think the easy choice then is Saquon, because once again, you have limited choices.
It's tough pickings for the offense.
Correct. And that's the main point, which leads me back to why the defensive player is the MVP this season, because of what that side of the ball produced. All right, so we did MVP, we did offensive and defensive players of the year. Now let's focus on the first years, the rookies. And they do an offensive and a defensive rookie of the year each year at NFL Honors. So let's focus on that for this team. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball. Your defensive rookie of the year in 2023.
I think this is probably a consensus, right? What Banks did this year as a rookie.
Yep.
He had some mistakes. He had some penalties. I expected those things to happen as a rookie, that cornerback position. These receivers in the NFL, man, they're so talented, even in this division. going against A.J. Brown, Smith, and CeeDee Lamb, and, all of the guys in Dallas, Gallup, and, Cooks, Terry McLaurin, like our division.
It's a challenge, yeah.
Our division is loaded with really good receivers, and the Giants played good receivers outside of the division as well. And Banks did not back down. He was up in everybody's face. He had that true short-term memory. Whether it was a big play or a bad play, he forgot about it and played the next play like it was his first play of the game. And you got to take that in. It's very hard to play corner in this league. People think that it's hard to play corner because it's not. It's just a physical thing, and you're matching up against these great wide receivers. That's a good thing. But it's also, you got to think at corner. People don't think you got to think that much, but there's a lot that goes into running a route. And there's a lot that goes into playing those routes when you're on defense. There's route recognition, there's scheme, there's run fits that you got to do. And I think Banks did a pretty good job this year.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he had the greatest rookie season ever, but as far as this team and what he did, I think he has to be the rookie of the year.
Well, you're on an island a lot, too, both from a mental and a physical standpoint. Yeah. So where he was tested, how he came out of that, I think is extremely valuable. And in fairness, not a lot of competition for Deonte Banks when it comes to this award.
Yeah,
mainly because other guys didn't play as much. Right? I mean, Trey Hawkins didn't play after the early stage of the season. Owens saw time a little bit later on in the year. And Jordan Riley also some flashes late in the season. But sample size, Deonte Banks blows everybody else out of the water. So I'm with you. He's the consensus guy when it comes to Defensive Rookie of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year, there's a few choices.
Yep.
I'm going to go with Jalen Hyatt. And it wasn't a sexy season, JC, for him. He didn't put up astronomical numbers. But I think when his number was called, he made the most of his opportunities. How many deep balls did we see him track, kept his feet in? John Michael Schmitz is another guy that I gave some heavy consideration for, but, he had his battles up front because of the caliber of the competition that you were talking about that Deonte Banks went up against. Well, it was a bit of a rude awakening for John Michael Schmitz at times this season, and it's also hard to evaluate rookie offensive linemen because there's only so much that you could put them under the microscope. So Hyatt, the rationale behind me for Jalen Hyatt being
and they don't win Rookie of the Year anyway.
Correct. Not that we're not going to consider that. Right? We're a little bit more bigger picture here in terms of our evaluation. But what I saw out of Hyatt, it wasn't so much the numbers. That's not what I get him caught up in. I'm getting caught up in when he was thrown the ball, the textbook fundamentals that were on display, tracking the ball, making the big plays, working with a variety of different quarterbacks. That's why I give Hyatt the edge for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
My Offensive Rookie of the Year, he played sparingly, but when he played, he gave the Giants hope. There was excitement in the stadium because of this kid, Tommy DeVito.
Okay.
And it says games played 9, but he only started, 5 games, was it? Was it 5 games?
Yeah, I believe it was in that ballpark.
In those 5 games, he was sacked 37 times. Or however many games he started. He played sparingly in other games.
Well, they had 2 quarterbacks, remember, that were sacked at least 30 times this season.
But, the kid, undrafted, nobody expected it.
6 starts, by the way.
Right. Nobody, and he was 3-3?
3-3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
so you're going with the quarterback record here, too.
No, I'm not. No.
I see what you're doing.
I'm going, that and the effect that I feel like he had on his team. You were at the stadium, right? Like the crowd was insane, right? Like they were going crazy when he made plays. They were going crazy when he would scramble and he'd do his little, he said the Italian thing. The kid had the moxie, he had the courage, and he was the 3rd string quarterback. 1st string quarterback, Daniel Jones, he goes down. Okay, Tyrod's up. Tommy DeVito's like, Tyrod got this. I ain't got to worry about nothing. All of a sudden, Tyrod goes down. Now he's thrusted into the job. Was that the Jets game? Was that the first Jets?
Yeah,
was
the
Jets game. This first time playing.
Yes, that was when Tyrod.
And that was a rough deal where the Giants really didn't let him pass the ball.
Well, they were limited in terms of what they asked him to do. Correct.
But I feel like after that, like the kid won some games. Like it wasn't just despite of him they won games. It was because of him. They did some pretty good things, and not one time. Just like I said about whoever I was saying earlier about he didn't play, but Saquon, he didn't play. I didn't really see Tommy DeVito playing poorly. He threw a couple not so great passes, but as an undrafted rookie, thrown into the fire, not really taking no reps in camp, not taking no reps during the season with the first team. All of a sudden, you're thrusted in. You're a starter in the middle of the season, and it was a lot going on here in New York. Sure. There was a lot of, attention being brought here, a lot of negative attention, and he was able to, kind of be, steadfast through it. And, he got the Giants a couple of wins. Not just him, of course, Dexter Lawrence, Bobby Carr, all the guys that we're naming attributed to all of the, the wins and, the stats that the Giants put up this year. But Tommy DeVito, I think he was the unsung hero for a team that lost his starting two quarterbacks.
Well, you don't have to be drafted. Undrafted guys fall into this category. So we are not going to discriminate in terms of whether or not you were selected in the 7 rounds. Most improved comeback player of the year. The other two categories that I want to get to. Let's start with most improved. And here, to me, it's a slam dunk for Micah McFadden. I mean, the season that he put together, and part of this is his own hard work, but I think another part of it is what Wink Martindale and the defense asked him to do. I mean, McFadden was a completely different player this season. And the other side of the equation is he took advantage of his reps. And you've seen this, JC. It's one thing to get the playing time. It's another thing to then produce. So he played 17 games in 2022. He was credited with 7 starts. But it's more about the snap count because all that means is you were on the field for the first play. Yeah. 16 games this year, credited with 14 starts. And he went from 59 combined tackles to 101. He went from 36 solo to 63. He went from 6 tackles for loss to 12, 2 quarterback hits to 6. He went down by 1 with sacks, but fumble recoveries, 0 to 4. He was opportunistic with an interception. Bobby Okereke and him, I thought, were the perfect combo because he played so well off of what Okereke brought to the table. But McFadden took a huge jump, and the value that the Giants could perhaps get out of him moving forward, it's hard to put that into terms because of what they were able to see jump-wise from 22 to 23. So he's my most improved player. And honestly, I don't think anybody else comes close unless you want to make a case for somebody.
You just told me what we were doing before, so I'm sitting there trying to scour the roster right now.
I like to put you in an adverse situation.
That's fine. And
see how you respond. Just because your playing days are over doesn't mean that
keep you on my toes, man. Keep me on my toes. But yeah, I don't really see, even from this year, from the first couple games of the year, McFadden was missing some tackles. And that's the thing with him. He's always kind of around the ball. So he's either going to make it or miss it, and early in the season, he was missing some tackles. I don't know if it was the Dallas or the Cardinals, San Fran. One of the early games, I was just looking like, man, he's struggling right now. Like, he missed 4 tackles by himself.
Yeah, I think it was the Arizona game.
Yeah, and he was struggling, and then you watched him kind of improve as the season went on. You watched him respond, and so even this year, from start to finish, he was the most improved player, not just from last year. So I love the way he played. He had great synergy with with Okereke, and that was a great 1-2 punch. He seemed like, he filled in that spot good, and even the highly touted Isaiah Simmons, of course, he didn't get sent there for too much, but everybody appreciates his athleticism and what he brings to the table in that regard. McFadden kept him basically on the bench, for the whole season, and Isaiah Simmons got rotated in. I think he started a couple games late, but that was McFadden's job. McFadden was a first and second down guy alongside Bobby Okereke, and Isaiah Simmons came in on third down. But I agree with you. I think McFadden had a really, really solid year at his outside linebacker position. Middle linebacker, I call it outside.
If Dane Belton played more, based on what he did at the tail end of the season, he would have made a stronger case. But the sample size between him and McFadden is on opposite ends of the spectrum. All right, comeback player of the year. Now, comeback, remember.
Give me a second with this one, all right?
No, that's fine. I'm going to give you a second. Well, here's how I'm going to buy you time. I want to explain it to our viewers because everybody views comeback, it's coming back from injury. To me, comeback is not just injury. Geno Smith won comeback player of the year last season. He wasn't hurt. So it could be somebody that had a rough go the previous year, straightened out, and all of a sudden proved to be a very reliable weapon. So you don't have to pick somebody that was hurt. I think it's easy to go with somebody that's hurt, and there is somebody that comes to my mind that deserves the award, but I don't want to just focus on players that were hurt. You can go in a direction of somebody that, maybe had a rough patch the previous season, got more playing time, became more of a stabilized force this season. So a variety of different directions. I would not read too much into comeback having to be synonymous with injury. And there are a few intriguing ones when you open the door beyond the injury label. So I don't know if I bought you enough time or you want me to go first.
Yeah.
You want me to go first. Well, the obvious one, and I'm probably going to wind up taking perhaps the one that you were going to go with, but I'll go with my secondary if you don't bring up Wan'Dale Robinson. What he did in the second half of the season, coming off the torn ACL, I think we're going to be talking about him. I'll give you a little bit of a teaser for the 2024 version of this. Wan'Dale, to me, is going to be the most improved player in 2024 because you give him a full season with that speed and full health. Watch out.
Too, man.
I think the sky is the limit. I was very high on him coming into this season. Maybe I thought the rehab process was going to go a little bit quicker and that he was going to become Superman, but I think you come to the realization everybody's different. It's not easy. But Wan'Dale, what he did in the second half of the season warrants absolutely the label of comeback player of the year because I think what he did in a small sample size is still impressive because, as you pointed out, JC, he finished with the most receptions on the team, even though in the first half of the season, he wasn't getting nearly as many targets. Yeah. So I think that says a lot about what he was able to accomplish given the injury and the revolving door at quarterback.
I'm looking at the roster right now.
There's another guy that I'll give you a hint. I think if you look on the offensive line, there's somebody else that you can make a case for comeback player of the year. Somebody else on the interior.
Shane?
Not Shane.
Not Andrew Thomas.
Not Andrew Thomas. A veteran who joined the team.
Pugh?
Justin.
Oh, Pugh.
Just right
over my head. The only teammate, him and Sterling. Oh, yeah. Well, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Pugh comes back, what he took on. Not saying that he was an all-pro or a Pro Bowler, and he'd admit that himself, but the tough situation he was thrown into, right? He had to fill the void.
Pugh definitely skipped my mind. I'm so sorry, Pugh. I love you so much. That's my guy.
Well, we know Justin watches religiously, so now...
I'm looking at the stats.
I think you should stare into the camera a little bit closer. I want to see a tear come down as well.
I'm sitting here looking at the stats, and Pugh's name doesn't come up with
of course.
Stats.
Yeah. Well, that's why we were talking about John Michael Schmitz earlier in the program. Good luck justifying that.
But that's a good one. You brought it to my attention, and if my brain would have been working functional today...
We'll excuse it. Like I said, I put you in a diverse situation, so that's on me.
So I'll go with Pugh then. You took...
I took Wan'Dale Robinson.
You took Wan'Dale,
So you get credit for Justin Pugh, and now Pugh feels a lot better.
I brought it up.
Because you were the one that ignited it. Even though Maz weighed in, I weighed in. I gave you 75 clues, but it's okay. Yes.
You did. Yeah. I aimed everybody on the offensive line but him. But his impact, I feel like, on the locker room. He was taking the guys out. He was making sure the guys ate, with each other, the fellowship. And I feel like that is a recipe for success in terms of camaraderie, in terms of fellowship, in terms of bringing the locker room together, in terms of feeling like a family. And I think Pugh was the one that got here and was like, hey, guys, we got to start getting together. We got to start meeting. We got to start talking. We got to start loving each other up outside of the building. And that'll help us on the field, which is true. So sorry, Pugh, I forgot about you a little bit.
There we go. So those are a few individual awards, and if you have others that you want to chime in on, we're going to get to some phone calls in a little bit as we move forward here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. One other one that I wanted to throw out here for comeback player of the year, or I should say most improved, Jason Pinnock, I think, deserves some consideration for most improved.
A really good year.
What he was able to contribute this season, even going back to training camp when he made that one-handed interception that absolutely set the tone and stole the thunder, at least on the defensive side of the ball. So in addition to what's going on in terms of the end of the season perspective, we're also monitoring what's happening in Mobile, Alabama with the Senior Bowl, as our very own John Schmelk has gone from the Shrine Bowl to the Senior Bowl. It's like, where's Waldo? It's where's John Schmelk these days, and John now joins us here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, John? How we doing?
Hey, what's up, guys? I am at Hancock Whitney Stadium here in Mobile, Alabama. The first practice just wrapped up. The guys are doing a little walkthrough before stretch even in practice number 2. And it's been fun watching the guys. The weather down here is lovely. It's around 60 degrees, little breeze. It's been really fun watching some of these guys, and we have one practice in the books here. And you can see the jump in talent level going from Shrine to Senior Bowl. You can see that there are some legit round 1, early round 2 guys in this game.
Who has jumped out on you? Because you said this is day 1, right? First practice. Anybody jumped out, from the field, just like, man, who is that? Or, I mean, who everybody is. But, like, wow, these guys, the real deal. Did you see anybody like that first day?
No, absolutely. We only got to see one team so far, so I can only comment on the national roster. But I think, Bo Nix and Michael Penix look the part. They're big. They got good arms. They can make all the throws. But I will say, much like we saw at some points during the season, Penix a little erratic on a couple throws here or there. Roman Wilson, the national champion and slot wide receiver from Michigan, no one could cover him. He was getting open the entire practice, over the middle, top of the route, just too quick for guys to really stay with him. But to me, and this will probably, I don't know if it'll depress JC, but to me the stars were the offensive linemen, and I think they really dominated the front against the defense over the course of this practice. I think probably the best player I saw on the field was Jackson Powers Johnson, the guard and center. He played both positions at Oregon. He played both positions today from Oregon. Just dominant, moving guys off the ball, really good punch, was dominant in one-on-one drills. Talisi Fuaga, he's going to be a first-round offensive tackle out of Oregon State, pardon me. He was excellent. He was only at right tackle today. I'm curious to see if they either move him to guard or left tackle at some point during the week. But today he was right tackle only, and I thought he did a really nice job. He gets his hands on you, that rep is over. One of the guy, it looked like he might have got tired at the end of practice because he did get beat a little bit in a couple one-on-ones towards the end. Kingsley Suamatai from BYU, he's 6'4", he's 330, he has 34.25-inch arms, and he can move. He is an athlete. He was at right tackle today. I think he had one snap at left tackle as well, but he's a guy that I think is going to be a first-round pick in this year's draft. And then Roger Rosengarten from Washington tackle was, I thought, impressive. He did a nice job out there. Jordan Morgan, who's a potential first-round offensive lineman out of Arizona, he had a couple rough reps, to be honest with you. On defense, Leitu Latu from UCLA, he's probably going to be a top 20 pick, either the first or second pass rusher coming off the board. He was excellent today. And then the top cornerback that's here was in this practice, Quinton Mitchell from Toledo. He's 6 foot, he's 195 pounds, he's long, and I think I saw him knock down 2 or 3 passes over the course of practice, which is JC knows in one-on-ones and stuff. It's tough living as a defensive back, but I thought of all the DBs, he definitely stood out amongst the group.
Yeah, I saw some highlights. Fuaga went up against Latu. And boy, did Latu have some problem navigating Fuaga in terms of that offensive line, defensive line.
Latu got his hands on him and just chucked him right to the ground.
Without a doubt, He was treating him like a rag doll, for the lack of a better term. The other guy that I saw receiving a lot of buzz, John, I don't know if you saw much of him, is Florida wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. A lot of people, at least on social media and from the commentary I saw on television, were interested in what he would do on one-on-ones. He seemed to make some contested catches in the end zone. I was just curious if anything may have caught your eye, because he moved around. He was at Arizona State, and then he jumped to Florida over the last 2 years.
Yeah, O-line, D-line one-on-ones were the same time as the wide receiver one-on-one, so I watched live the offense-defensive line. Luckily, I will get access to the practice tape, and I'm going to watch the wide receiver one-on-ones a little bit later on. So I saw a little bit of the wide receivers. I saw a little bit of the wide receivers during the team portion, but I did not watch the one-on-one. So I did see him make one catch on a slant, I believe, but otherwise he did not jump out at me. But again, I was watching the big men up front.
How is Peter Bowden from Wisconsin? He's a long snapper.
Yeah, now we know why. He's really digging deep, JC. See, he brought up the roster, John, so he wants to know everything about Badgerland, apparently.
No, good, but for a real question, how are they evaluating, is this an evaluation? It has to be a real evaluation. Like these linebackers, the defensive linemen, these tight ends, these running backs, these guys that are going to get to the NFL, and some of them are going to only make it for special teams.
Yeah.
How are they evaluating? They're doing real live periods? Are they doing one-on-one drills in special teams? Because I know when I was in the league, like, that was like a real heavy emphasis, those one-on-one drills that you would do against a very similar athlete, and they would see and evaluate you that way. And I remember me and JT Thomas, we came in the same year, basically for the same position. We were good friends, and we would go after each other on special teams, those one-on-one drills in training camp.
They did 2 special teams periods where you did get a lot of the gunner and the blockers and the gunners having their reps there on the outside, but they did not do specific one-on-ones. I should mention, though, for you, JC, your non-Wisconsin long snapper that's here, because I'll be honest, I was not paying attention to the long snapper.
You wasn't?
But your guard, Tanner Bortolini, who's 6'3 and a half, 305 pounds. It looks like he was created to play guard at Wisconsin. He's just a big guy. He mauls you, moves you around. He's got a nasty attitude. I thought he played pretty well. One running back, you mentioned it, the position and linebacker that I'll bring up to you. Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. He's not a big guy. He's 5'9", but he's 217 pounds. So at 5'9", 217, he's got some thickness to him, right? He's quick. He made a couple guys miss in short areas in the hole that I thought was pretty darn impressive. I thought he had a good day. And then of the linebackers, I think you'd really like Peyton Wilson, JC, out of North Carolina State. 6'4", 234, really gets downhill, a bit of a thumper. He had some injury issues. I think he had 2 or 3 season-ending injuries in his 5 years at NC State. So medicals will be a big deal for him. But he definitely got involved in the run game.
I don't know how JC feels about some of these West Coast teams now joining the Big Ten. They were in territory originally that wasn't necessarily infringing upon his old school.
Even worse, Wisconsin went to like the spread offense this year. I mean, that's
so
ridiculous.
different. Yeah. So different.
So, see, this is what happens.
We didn't even know what a wide receiver was when I was in college. A wide receiver? What? Just give us tight ends and offensive linemen, running backs.
So, John, in terms of moving forward, what's on the schedule for tomorrow and looking ahead, or even hearing from some individuals that you're anticipating?
No, I appreciate you asking, Lance. So if you go to the Giants Huddle podcast, yesterday we posted all our interviews from the Shrine game. Maz will be able to tell us, Dom, whether or not the Eric Galko interview is up there on the Huddle yet today. If not, it will be shortly.
It's not yet, but it will be.
There you go. So he runs the Shrine Bowl. So that'll be the rest of our Shrine Bowl content yesterday and today. Draft season, Tony, Pauline, and I are going to record that after practice today. So that'll post tomorrow. Then tomorrow afternoon, I get to do my Senior Bowl player interviews. That'll post on Thursday, and then I think I'm going to do Jordan Reed from ESPN, their draft analyst, and we will break down everything we saw at practice here for the Huddle podcast, which will drop on Friday. So a busy content-filled week. We have another practice that's going on right now. We have double practices tomorrow and Thursday. I'll have practice reports up on Giants.com as well. So if people are interested in what's going on down here, we'll have it covered every which way.
Sounds good. Well, we'll let you get caught up on the practices that are going on, and we'll continue to speak to you down the line throughout the course of the week here.
Thank you, guys, and I'll be live on BBK next couple of days right around the same time. So we'll be rocking and rolling.
Sounds good. John Schmelt with us here.
Thanks, guys.
You got it. From the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, talking about some of the standouts from day one of practice, and he will be monitoring the ins and outs. As we're seeing a lot of the individual drills today. If you flip on the television, you can see it, social media, and so forth. This is when you can really see the separation between the men and the boys. And once again, Fuaga, that kid is quite the presence. The Oregon State tackle. Woo! If he goes to a team that needs assistance, he will make an immediate presence. I would be very surprised if he struggles on the next level, given how he's handling himself against some of the premier talent on the defensive side of the ball. All right, let's open up the phone lines as we move forward here. 201-939-4513. Real quickly, though, before we do that, just a few reminders in terms of programming / looking ahead to the upcoming season. Giants Huddle Podcast, you can check that out on your favorite podcast platform. You can also go to giants.com/podcast. As far as taking your fandom to the next level, season ticket membership. You can stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2024 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And the Giants official connected TV streaming app, Giants TV, it brings you original video content, game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, as well as the Giants mobile app. All right, let's head to the phone lines, and we check in with James in Georgia here on BBKL. What's happening, James? What do you got for us?
What's going on, guys? How you doing today?
We're doing all right. What's on your mind?
So last week I called about the Shrine games and how they putting in underclassmen, and Paul was gonna ask John how they if they switched like the numbers, if it was like that they added the underclassmen, did they take away from the number of seniors and just keep it one strict number, or did they add underclassmen and now it's a larger group of kids you have to look at? I don't know if he ever got that question from him. But
yeah, I can't answer whether or not he asked him that. I mean, we could bring it up as we move forward throughout the course of the week. I believe they just added to the evaluation of the talent pool. I don't know if they created more roster spots just because they now extended the pool to underclassmen. Because, I mean, there's got to be a limitation as to how many players they can invite, given the layout of the land and everything.
When did they start doing that?
They started doing that this
year.
Yeah.
Right. And Jonathan, I'm glad you're on because I had a question of, with us losing Wink, are there any guys that you've seen, or a better question, when you were playing, do you know of guys who walked away from the team they were on because of a coach and because of maybe a new guy who came in, didn't fit the system or he maybe thought that I didn't fit that new system, so he walked away from the team or took money elsewhere? And I got one more after that.
Well, why don't you ask the other question, and then we'll answer both of them simultaneously.
My last point would just kind of be I'm still pounding the table for Jaden Daniels, even if you got to do a Eli Manning type trade to get down to, not saying number one, but maybe 2 or 3 to, if that's how low you got to go to get one of them top 3 guys. But I'm pounding the table for Jaden Daniels still. I know a lot of people aren't, and, I just think I've seen enough of the Daniel Jones movie. I'll take you guys
all right, James.
there.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate the phone call. I mean, keep in mind, remember, the teams that are selecting in that 2 to 3 area also are in need of a quarterback. Mm-hmm. So it takes 2 to tango, as I like to say. Just because you want to move up doesn't mean it can be accomplished under those circumstances. I don't know if you want to address the defensive coordinator question.
Yeah, I didn't really see, like this year, what happened with Wink and the Giants. I've never really seen anything play out like that. I've seen players kind of do stuff like that. I've been around some wild boys.
Some characters.
Yeah, man. But there was a incident that happened when I was in Tampa. We were, in Tampa, it rains a lot down there, and there were no indoor. So, like, we were in a little bit of rain, it's fine, but in thunderstorms, you can't go outside. Like, they don't allow you to be anywhere close to the field. So when we knew it was a thunderstorm, we would go to, like, this, church or something. It was like this big, like, banquet hall. And we would do, like, walkthroughs and practice in there. I hated doing it because it's not real practice, But there was one time with Coach Sheridan. He was our defensive coordinator under Greg Schiano.
Bill Sheridan, right? You're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
And, man, you guys were talking, and, Coach Schiano was trying to get his point across to the defense. And Coach Sheridan was coaching one-on-one with the guy, like just kind of talking to him. And Coach, Schiano, he just was like, everybody be quiet. And then he was like, everybody shut up. And he like kind of looked right at Sheridan. And I looked at him and looked at Sheridan. I was like, oh, man. Like the power struggle, and not to say that the same thing happened here. I don't think so. But, it's the head coach's deal. It's like he runs the show on the field. And sometimes, a coach, and I'm using Sheridan as an example because I saw this happen, he wasn't doing anything, subordinate, insubordinate. Like he was just coaching. He was doing his thing. And usually when coaches tell everybody to shut up, he talks to the players, So that power struggle right there when I noticed, and Sheridan really didn't coach for the rest of the day. So that's the human part of football. That's the side that people don't understand where, that little clash of heads might have just ruined their relationship forever. I don't know. I didn't really pay attention to it. Coaches got fired anyway. We weren't that good. But, there's a human aspect that comes into, there was something that happened. There was something that said. There was, a look. There was a brief disagreement between men, and I think that's probably what happened here. Not the same, situation. That was intense. Like that was like, man, like as a man, that's rough to see. Sure. Because Sheridan, he just kind of folded. And I don't know if I would have did that as a defensive coordinator, maybe. But like I got a mouth on me, and I've been known to definitely voice my opinion. But that was rough to see, and that probably ended any type of, man, I'm being Coach Sheridan, man, I really appreciate Schiano, it probably ended that day. when him doing that, because it's like, why are you doing that? And not, like I said, not to say that happened here, but I'm pretty sure there was clashing that was happening, which is a natural thing between men. I clash with my teammates, I clash with my coaches.
Yep.
But the I guess the fluidity of having the conversation, communication was always there, and look, I was let go. I was suspended actually one time because I was quote unquote insubordinate. And I'm not like that. It was just kind of like a disagreement between myself and the coach. And I said I was going to do one thing. He basically told the coach head coach I was doing something else, and ended up getting suspended for a preseason game. And that sucked because I'm sitting at home watching the Bucks play the Bills in preseason. It's like, what is happening right now? I was so this is weird. This is so crazy. And then not to say I reevaluate everything, but it was like you got to kind of give a little bit, at times when it comes to that power dynamic, in terms of because like for me it's all about respect, and I try to be as respectful as possible. But the guy, Hardy Nickerson was the coach who I kind of got into it with him with. And it was two men, you know what I mean? He felt some type of way about it. I felt some type of way about it. He felt a little bit differently than I felt. And he went back to Lovey, and he went back to Leslie Frazier was the defensive coordinator that year. And they ended up sitting me down, for a game. And that was a big whoa, I got suspended. I'm not that guy. I'm not like a brown nose or anything, but I'm working hard. I'm at work. I'm doing my thing. And, I give my effort. I loafed one time on the field. One time. And that's all the way back in training camp of my rookie year. And I got cursed out by Greg Williams. I never did it again. So my effort was always there. But sometimes, sometimes they gave us a little homework and I wasn't too excited about that.
Understandable. Well, I'm sure there's some students that can relate in that department as well. I just looked up the Senior Bowl breakdown, 58-man rosters, and from what I understand, that has not changed, even with now them opening the door to underclassmen. Because keep in mind, juniors were eligible previously to play in the Senior Bowl as long as they met graduation requirements.
So they had to be in their fourth year no, because you could be graduated in 3 years.
If you had enough credits to be labeled as a senior
graduating, finishing
in the spring, you could still classify for the Senior Bowl. So they're not, to answer the caller's question, they have not adjusted the roster just because they're opening up the talent pool here. So it's still 58-man rosters. That has not changed as a result of the landscape here. All right, let's head back to the phone lines. We check in with Hugo in New Jersey here on BBKO. What's happening, Hugo? What do you got for us?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Hey, Lance, I'm really calling in response to a call you received yesterday from a caller. I believe his name was Mike in Massachusetts. And he made the point that the Giants had a talent evaluation problem in retaining players. So in other words, they let useful players walk away.
Sure.
And I think Paul's stance was that there was no talent evaluation problem. I got to say, I completely disagree. I mean, I think Mike's examples may have been a little bit off, but I think you were right in noting Kevin Zeitler. I will also note another prominent player, B.J. Hill. But I've been watching football all season, and every once in a while I say, oh, there's a former Giant. I'm just going to give you some less prominent guys. Isaac Yadam with the New Orleans Saints. Tanner Hudson with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Hudson, in fairness, was not a homegrown player, though.
Well, who's that?
Hudson was not a homegrown player, though.
Hey, Jonathan Hankins.
So
I was mad when he left.
I'm saying these were players that were in-house. Well, there were no economic reasons for letting them go. It was, and by the way, I don't think it's just like a front office talent evaluation problem. I think it's a joint thing between the front office and the coaching staff. It used to be that when the Giants let go of a player, rarely did he play for other teams or make any meaningful contribution. There were spots where it happened, and we understood it for economic reasons and in areas where there was other talent already in-house, notably the defensive tackle position. I'll go from Cornelius Griffin, Barry Cofield, Linval Joseph, Davlin Thomas.
Well, yeah, I mean, and they used
one generation after another.
Correct. Well, they would draft another player to then replace that guy. I mean, that seemed to be the trend.
Right, that's the NFL.
Right. Correct.
That's the NFL.
But Kevin Zeitler being cut for economic reasons to make cap room for guys like Galladay and Kyle Rudolph, because you're reaching to give Daniel Jones weapons, is a misstep. It's a failure. Look, here's a statistical thing. When the population size gets big enough, it's not a random event. There's some underlying causality. And I think the Giants have a problem, and they ought to recognize the problem and try to rectify it. The other thing Paul said that I completely, maybe he was suggesting this, but I think it's a crazy concept, is that a player's personality profile is somewhat separate from talent evaluation, that you're completely justified based on a player's skill set to take them. And I would say, actually, the personality profile to me is one of the biggest factors in taking a player, because otherwise you make mistakes like Eric Flowers, Eli Apple, which was noted yesterday, DeAndre Baker, and Kadarius Toney. Think of all that first-round capital that's just gone, wasted. No impact, no positive impact on the team. So I hope what Paul is saying is not reflective of the thinking inside the building, because if it is, that's a problem that needs to be rectified as well.
Well, I mean, once again, there's no doubt about it that we talked about the reason why the Giants have had some issues is because they did not strike gold in the draft. I think that's been well documented. I don't necessarily think that you're bringing anything new to the forefront. Any NFL team, and JC can attest to this because he's been with other organizations, you can't make up for everything in free agency. And appreciate the phone call, Hugo. You can't continue to go back into the well of a spending frenzy. You have to be able to draft and develop. I mean, there's a reason why certain teams like the Green Bay Packers, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, consistently make the playoffs. It's because they don't go aggressively into free agency year in and year out. Instead, they emphasize the draft. So, I mean, the Giants are not, JC, different than the rest of the NFL landscape. But I reference, on yesterday's program, I referenced Kevin Zeitler because Zeitler's the best example of a player that went to another team and was not just a complementary weapon. We're talking about a starting offensive lineman at a position of need for the Giants. All of the other players that the caller yesterday and even Hugo just threw out, I don't think they match what Kevin Zeitler has done. I mean, Tanner Hudson, I understand you want to say he's had a few good highlights with the Bengals. Hudson was with the Bucks, he was with the Niners, he was with the Giants, and he was with the Bengals. So if you want to accuse the Giants, then you should accuse the Bucks and the Niners for passing up on him.
I mean, and look, this is the NFL. That happens. Like, I think whoever's the call was yesterday, I think they're reaching a little bit. And it's because they're focused solely on the Giants. But, like, the Chiefs they let Tyreek Hill go last year.
Well, they traded him, yeah.
You know, like, they traded him. Like, they got rid of the best receiver in the league. You know, like, this happens all the time.
And part of that was fueled by money.
And look who's in the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill, right? And then also look at the other team, San Fran. They gave up everything for Trey Lance. Like, stuff happens where you got to evaluate talent and you make a decision.
Sure.
You know, whether that's bringing them in as in the draft, bringing them as a free agency, or opposite, letting them go. You know what happens? You know, we lost Jonathan Hankins. He's been a starter for the Dallas Cowboys ever since. You know, and I didn't want him to leave. Yeah, that's my best friend, him and Snacks, you know. But it happens. That's how the league is, you know. But I think they're reaching a little bit because you're solely focused on the Giants. But this happens throughout the league. I mean, think about a lot of guys like Jadeveon Clowney. He's still playing good football right now. Geno Smith. He was let go from
Geno's
several teams,
yeah.
You know. And it's like you never really know what's going to happen.
Because
the
environment.
Kenny Golladay. You can't tell me when they got him here that he wasn't a quality free agent signing. He was. From what he did in his career, he was. He just didn't pan out. That happens. There's no way you can say Kenny Golladay didn't deserve that contract. Just like when people argue Daniel Jones didn't deserve the contract. He did. He earned it. The people in the NFL, there's only a couple of times it happened in my whole longevity of being involved. My rookie year was 2009. I've been involved ever since. I've been involved for a long time. I haven't seen too many guys that didn't get what they deserved in terms of a contract. You know, I'm like, man, he should never got that money. I never seen it. There was one guy a long time ago, I'm not going to say his name, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. This is why I love the NFL. You can't go out there and show your highlights and get paid. You're not going to get signed by showing your highlights. You know, you can't say, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. No, you have to prove it. And that's the great thing about the NFL. Every single person in the NFL is proven, and they get their money because they're proven. And sometimes economically, whether it's a roster change or just don't fit, or you got to be moved, new coaches, whatever it is, the turnover in NFL is over and over every year. You just can't keep the same guys. It's just really hard to do it. And I think you're so focused on the Giants. It's like, I don't think look, over the last few regimes, there have been some mistakes made. Even this regime, that's going to continue to happen. Nobody's going to bat 1,000. Saquon Barkley. They questioned Saquon Barkley number 2. He was a number 2 pick overall. A lot of people questioned Gettleman. And there was other questionable things, but I never questioned that pick. And still to this day, I don't question that pick. But that's people going to do that all the time.
Sure.
They're gonna pick and prod. And look, I have no qualms with this regime and how they're evaluating talent and Joe Shane and who those guys are bringing in. But it's up to the guys that they bring in to perform. That's it.
Well, and also every team makes financial decisions. I mean, I bring up Kevin Zeitler, but Zeitler was let go because they needed to then maximize and try to address other spots. Did it work out? It may have not worked out, but the intent behind why they made the move was because they said, hey, we need more offensive weaponry. Unfortunately, while they went to get after more offensive weaponry, those guys didn't necessarily stay healthy and pan out, and then you still had a hole on the offensive line, which was created by that move. B.J. Hill, who was brought up, Hill was traded for Billy Price from the Bengals because they needed help on the offensive line. B.J. Hill is playing a lot more in Cincinnati than he ever played here with the Giants.
Yeah.
I mean, I just even brought up his snap count to confirm it. His last 2 years with Cincinnati, he's played at least 71% of the snaps.
That's a lot for a
the
defensive
most
lineman.
snaps he's played with the Giants was 59%, which was his rookie year.
But that's a lot too, though, for a defensive lineman.
No, but then it went down to 44 and then 35. And oh, by the way, he played 16 games in all 3 of those seasons. So you can't say this is a result of an injury. But the bottom line is, and you've seen this, a team also has to play a player for him to be productive.
Yeah.
So Hill fits in better in Cincinnati. He's playing more, and that's why it warranted a new contract for him. So I think that also is another piece of the pie.
I want to use myself for an example too, because my fifth year in the league, 6th year, I did 4 years in New Orleans. My 2nd year in Tampa Bay, and this is the year I got traded. When I got to Tampa in 2014, I was a rotator guy, playing some special teams, but I was like right behind Levante David and Mason Foster. I was like that 3rd or 4th linebacker. I was playing, but not, a full-time starter. Then my next year, I was competing for the starting job, but I got hurt in that offseason. I got hurt the year before. I got knee surgery, and I came in. So I was a little bit off in terms of, the way I was running and moving and the way I played. And I struggled a little bit that 2nd year in Tampa. And I didn't have a great start to the season. I won a starting job, kind of lost a starting job a little bit. And I just felt like I wasn't playing well, And then I ended up getting traded in the middle of the season. I went to New England, play for them, start a couple games for them, have tackles on special teams, on defense, play in the Super Bowl. I win a ring, and then I get signed with the Giants. I played 3 years with the Giants, basically a starter for 3 years, was a captain. I was able to bounce back. But was it Tampa wrong for giving me, you know what I mean? Trading me away, and it's timing and situations too.
Yeah.
I was basically hurt when I was down there. And I think I did get a little healthy as the season went on, but I struggled a little bit early,
Sure.
And that's me being, an adult and looking back on my career, man, I wasn't playing well. I kind of lost my starting job a little bit, and things happen, and I had a conversation with Ojulari this year. And I talked to him about kind of my journey a little bit and how I was basically hurt my first 4 or 5 years in the league. And I got healthy when I was in New York, and I had my best 3 years of my career, my last 3 years in the league. And I was hurt the whole time, but I was able to kind of figure out how to play with it. And then I hit a stretch where I was kind of relatively healthy. And look, a lot of the guys that are getting moved around the league, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's that. Guys can't stay healthy. I think Waller was landed here in New York because of that reason.
Yeah, well, I think the Raiders started to say, how much longer are we going to hold on to him if we don't know if he's going to hold up?
And that's the entire running back market. right? How long
Yeah.
can these guys hold up for? So it's not so black and white when you look at stuff like this. You know, it's a lot of stuff that goes
There's
on.
different reasoning.
It's so that's why I'm just kind of putting my example out there, and we could just, I mean, we could get every individual in the league has their own little story about what happened to them in free agency or the draft or whatever, whether they slid up, moved back, or whatever the case is. And there's just so many different reasons that, I mean, we would never know all the reasons that's really going on, you know?
Yeah, but it's not, once again, there's not one rationale behind why.
It's not it's not
correct,
a solve
every player
everything.
has moved on. Exactly. All right, let's try to squeeze in a caller or two. Scott's in New Mexico joining us here on BBKO. What's happening, Scott? What do you got for us?
Hi, guys. First of all, I disagree with Hugo. I'll cite his own example. Kadarius Toney was traded to Kansas City. What did he do? He helped them win a Super Bowl. Talent evaluation can mean a lot of different things. It could mean how.
That's the first name you bring up, Kadarius Toney.
Right, and then Andy
He's going
Reid,
through it right now.
And Kadarius Toney can't catch a pass this season, so what does Andy Reid do? He sits him.
Yep.
And it's talent evaluation from both sides, the player and the coach. But my main point, I agreed with pretty much everything you guys said in regards to the most valuable players and so forth. But somebody who was a little bit overlooked was Tyrod Taylor. And I wonder if he fits into your dynamic. And the reason I mention that, he had, I think, 19 passes over 20 yards. Very few starting quarterbacks have that. And so I don't know if you can call him comeback player of the year, but it relates to a point yesterday, Lance, that you said in regards to Daniel Jones. And this is the question that I have. Daniel Jones is recovering from a serious injury, and I'd say 40 to 50% of his dynamic is due to the fact that he can run the football. We don't know if he'll be able to do that. We do know that Tyrod Taylor can run the football. And so what I was wondering from the perspective of looking at the roster, if the Giants don't go the quarterback route, how important is it to sign Tyrod Taylor to a contract if you're going to keep Daniel Jones on the roster, which I hope they do? And is that a real key? Because then they have a quarterback that can function properly, knowing the schemes and so forth that were already established. And since you're short on time, I'll take the question.
Well, just a real quick,
yeah.
Scott, just a clarification. Sure. Are you emphasizing the fact that Tyrod can run and is mobile? Is that the main point?
Exactly. You go back to San Francisco, and one of the things you didn't mention yesterday when I was listening to your information on why San Francisco ran the ball, the reason San Francisco won that game was the fact that Brock Purdy, on most of the important downs, was able to run the football.
Sure.
And that was the main reason why San Francisco won that game. I know that everybody's going to talk about all the miscues, but that was the central core I saw in the San Francisco game. So you need today a running quarterback. If you look at
I don't know if you need a running quarterback. I think you like to have a quarterback that can extend plays.
Yep.
Yeah, because, I mean, you don't need Lamar Jackson,
Correct.
but you want somebody that, yes, can escape the pocket, keep
Correct.
plays alive, and do that as a result of his legs. Sure.
Right.
But,
and that's the reason why I'm asking the question, because I think it's so important that you have a mobile quarterback. And if Daniel Jones, we don't know how long this injury takes to heal. We do know we have a quarterback now, as I mentioned, who could be sort of a comeback player of the year because he didn't really play last year, who's effective. And that's why I'm a big proponent of signing him to a contract. So I wanted to get your perspective of that. And
appreciate the phone call, Scott, and thanks for giving us a ring. Well, Tyrod has proven that he has value even beyond this season. I mean, based on what he's done, JC, over the course of his career. But if you're looking for a mobile guy, I don't think the conversation necessarily starts and ends with Tyrod Taylor. No. I think you could do that through the draft. You can look at somebody else on the free agent market. To me, they're not limited or cornered in because Tyrod is the only player that can offer them that mobility factor.
Yeah, no. And, yeah, you don't need a running quarterback in this day and age. I mean, Tom Brady was, 3 years removed from the league, and he had a lot of success. He won a Super Bowl in Tampa, and he was like 87 years old, and he never moved in his career.
Well, because he gets rid of the football so quickly.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to play quarterback.
Yes.
So Look, Tyrod, I love Tyrod. Like, I know Tyrod personally. I think he's a phenomenal person, phenomenal player. But is he a viable option? Is he a reliable option? That's a better word to use. Is he a reliable option as a backup? Because now you have a quarterback who, your first-string quarterback in Daniel Jones, who you just signed to a big deal, who is probably going to be on the shelf come training camp. Maybe first game he could pop up. I don't know. I think is unlikely to be healthy. For him to be a healthy starter in week 1 of the season, right? Who is going to be the week 1 starter? Is it going to be Tyrod? Tyrod for the New York Giants. And not even for the New York Giants. Everywhere he's been hurt. And if the Giants are not thinking of that, which I know they are, then they're fools. I know they're thinking of that. They have to be thinking of that. Because every single time Tyrod has played for the Giants, he's gotten hurt. He played last year a little bit, came in one game, Daniel Jones got hurt, he comes in, he looks good, throws a good deep pass, runs the ball, gets knocked out.
Sure.
Comes in this game, gets hurt twice this year. He got punctured lungs. He has this deal with some wild stuff happening to him.
All the starting jobs he's lost, unfortunately.
Because of the injuries, and he's a quality backup. I think one of the top backup in the league. Can he be a starter? I think he can. I think he showed that consistently. But I think you have to consider the health, especially when your first-string quarterback is probably not going to be available. So the Giants have to bring in, because he said something about Daniel Jones being a roster. He's going to be in a roster, 100%. He might start on IR or whatever, maybe with it start and then put him on IR.
Maybe he starts on PUP.
Something on the terms of he might do that, but he's going to be on a roster at the end of the season. Yep. At the end of the day, that's just how it's going to be. My thing is, how many extra quarterbacks do the Giants bring in? Right? Let's say they keep Tyrod and they keep Tommy DeVito. You have to bring in one more, at least one more. So there has to be 3 quarterbacks, not including Daniel Jones, on this roster during the offseason. It has to be. You can't go in the offseason with 2. You have to have 3 because you got to run OTAs, and then when training camp comes, you got to have 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, and remember, at this point, there's no limitation on the roster other than 90. So you got more roster spots you can afford to put forth towards a quarterback, too. You're not limited at the 53-man roster in the offseason, is my point. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Joe Shane made that clear. The position's going to have to be addressed.
Has to be.
But I think you bring up an interesting point about, you look at Taylor's injury baggage, Daniel Jones now coming off an injury. How much more risk do you want to take at that position? But you also need to balance that with experience
100%.
At the position, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you draft a quarterback, that quarterback has not taken one NFL snap.
Right.
Whereas Taylor has a wealth of experience in that department. So, these are the things you have to weigh. But, yeah, they can afford, to answer your question, JC, they can afford to have 4 quarterbacks on the roster during the offseason. That's no question. Where they can't afford to have 4 quarterbacks on the roster is during the regular season. I will tell you that. They're not keeping 4 guys. They may keep 3, but the 4th guy is going to be on the practice squad.
Yes.
And you're going to have to hope that he can stay on the practice squad because you always run the risk of him being claimed. All right. That'll wrap up shop here on Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We'll be up and running again on Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern as we continue to evaluate what's going on at the Senior Bowl and look ahead to what is going to be a busy offseason here for the Giants and the rest of the NFL. Today's episode, Big Blue Kickoff Live, part of the Giants platforms everywhere and at Giants.com/podcast. For Jonathan Casillas, I'm Lance Meadows. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest, and we'll speak to you on Wednesday right here on BBKL. Have a good one.
Tired of restless nights? At Lisa, we know good sleep is essential for mental, physical, and emotional health. From memory foam mattresses to hybrids that keep you cool all night long, Lisa's mattresses offer exceptional comfort and support with free delivery and 100 nights to try out your mattress in the comfort of your home. For a limited time, save up to $700 off select mattresses plus 2 free pillows. Go to lisa.com/iHeart for an additional $50 off mattresses and select goods. Exclusions apply. See lisa.com for more details.
How powerful is Cox Internet? Powerful enough to let your band members in Vegas, Phoenix, and Rhode Island jam like you're all in the same garage. Get Cox Internet powered by fiber with America's fastest download speeds. It's internet built for tomorrow, today. Cox, always building better. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial connection. Speeds vary and are not guaranteed. Cox terms and other restrictions may apply. Analysis by Ookla Speed Test Intelligence Data. Fixed median download speeds. US Q3 2023.